Hello, everybody. Welcome to another calibration marketing webinar. Today, we kick off our summer webinar series with a number of great manufacturers that you all get to know on a slightly different plane. I'd like to think of these webinars as informative fireside chats. So we'll get to know not only about the products and the solutions and kind of where they fit in within the world of O&P, but also a little bit more about the organization, its people, how they came to be. And so today we have Christoffer and Russell on from Lindhe Xtend, and they'll share a little bit about their journey from Sweden to the US of Lindhe Xtend, the products that they offer to the lower limb community. And we'll kind of go down some rabbit holes and welcome you to ask any questions. And we will try to answer as many comments and questions as we can. Before we jump in, so a little bit about calibration marketing. We are taking new clients. What does that mean? For the last 8 years, I've been orthotics and prosthetics, mainly on the upper limb side of things. But what I've seen throughout my marketing and product and go-to-market journey is that there's this need for marketing support. It can be a small entity, a clinic, a larger company, and the need is there, but the support isn't for whatever reason. Maybe the, thought leadership isn't there. Maybe the just ability to take on another task. So what we offer at Calibration Marketing is kind of fitting that gap. And filling it, and whether it be on a project or an ad hoc basis or a retainer, whatever you need, we work with you to figure out what your goals are, what your strategy needs to be, and we kind of take it from there on a crawl to walk to run status, and eventually, hopefully, you can take that on yourselves, or we help you until you're ready. So without further ado, I will welcome on Christoffer from Lindhe Xtend. Hi, Christoffer.
Hello,
welcome. If you could give us a little bit about your background, share anything that you think is of importance from how where all of this evolved, and then we'll jump into some larger topics.
Absolutely. So it all starts, of course, with my accident. The year of 2006, I was in a railway accident. This particular night, I'm from Sweden, and I have summer break from school. I'm 17 years of age. I'm walking home alone, and this particular night, I'm being followed by 3 guys when I'm walking home. And the last thing that I remember is that I will try to shake them off and try to get back to downtown city. And I think I also do. But when I'm running, I'm also crossing some train tracks. And in the dark, I'm falling on these tracks, hit my head so badly, so I pass out with both the legs up on the train tracks. And I think you all can imagine what happens next.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
Yeah. Wow. So a cargo train comes, takes both my legs above the knee and also my left arm above the elbow. And I survived this mainly because I was an elite junior swimmer. And I continued with that later on into the Paralympic Games in Beijing, and later on also in the London Games. And when I'm getting back, or actually between these 2 Paralympic Games, I'm also practicing over and over and for several years with my prosthetics. And I feel that these prosthetics, they are working perfectly when I'm walking on indoor flat surfaces. But when I'm outdoor and walking, I love fishing and being in those kind of areas, then it's really tricky to keep my balance and be stable as a bilateral above knee amputee.
Sure.
So, eventually I feel that it's something wrong with these prosthetics. And at the same time, I'm studying to become an engineer within the field of product development at the university. So at the university, we start looking into this. And fast forward several years ahead, it eventually ended up with our first product, which is the Xtend foot.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a journey. I know you would share that there's a long version and a short version, but it's a very impactful version.
Yes, absolutely. And it was many stages during this as well. And when we started looking into this, then we were like, looked into the anatomics of the prosthetic foot and saw that prosthetic feet in general are very stiff, especially if you compare it to a human foot.
Mm-hmm.
Which can adapt to almost all kinds of unevenness that we are stepping on. But a prosthetic foot can't. And then when I come and walk two prosthetic legs and steps on unevenness that the foot can't really handle, then instead that creates an unstable moment where I could fall due to that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, certainly seems like there is a need for this type of solution. So I'm looking forward to touching on that and kind of going into some of the product and learning more about it. Before we do that, I wanted to welcome Russell Cannon to our stage. You have been with Lindhe Xtend since 2020. If you could share a little bit about your background, you're on the US side of the business, so we've got both kind of areas represented here. So if you could share a little bit more about how you came into this organization, what you've seen, and then we'll talk more about that Sweden to US migration and kind of how all of that evolved.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Linda. Yeah, so I joined the company in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic, or maybe even the height of the pandemic.
Excellent.
So odd timing. But I started in the O&P industry back in 1981 as a technician. While I was in college, I basically just needed a summer job and got a job as a tech. So this is truly one of those situations where an industry chooses you versus the other way around.
I totally get it.
And then as time evolved, and I realized I didn't want to be a tech my entire life. I wanted to get out of it. I had a very short stint doing some patient care, and I realized that wasn't maybe perfect for me, and I didn't have the necessary patience to deal with patients sometimes. So I ended up on the marketing and sales side of things, and I've worked for a number of companies in the O&P field. Starting way back, it was Boston Brace, but eventually Orth America, Spinal Tech, True Life. I was part of the Rush Foot when they launched in the US. And then before joining Lindhe Xtend, I was with Cascade in the distribution side.
Okay.
And I tell you all that basically to give you this background to say when Lindhe Xtend was looking to come to the US, they were looking for someone who had a varied background in O&P and kind of a well-rounded kind of experience portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I checked a lot of the boxes, I think, for them. So it was a great fit between the two of us. When I met Christoffer and Jessica Brostrom, who's the CEO of the company,
Mm-hmm.
I knew almost right away. I said, even though I'm toward the end of my career, maybe I said, this is a perfect match. So I was very excited to help them enter the U.S. market. So it has been, while challenging certainly at times, a great match for the two of us. I think it's mostly what we're doing is we're enjoying the journey that we're on to try and enter the U.S. market.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, I think we talked a little bit about it, and maybe this is something that you can share, Christoffer, is I've certainly kind of been on this journey of working for a larger manufacturer and not having to worry about any of that startup and coming to a new country and standing up operations. But I also have been on that side, and it's not easy. And I think that's certainly something that I want to discuss in this conversation, because there are a lot of startups and smaller entities that have not been gobbled up yet. Even though there's a lot of consolidation and acquisition and just a lot of movement happening in the industry. And it's not an easy feat to come from another market, even though the product may be solid. You've proven the concept in your native country, and others maybe throughout outside the US. And while product issues may be similar and you're going to get similar feedback from users, the market itself has different demands. And on top of that, you have to figure out operationally, well, how are you going to service these users and clinicians, and how will you educate them, and how will you service the products and all these different things. So Christoffer, if you could share anything about kind of that beginning from 2013 and a little bit of that journey. And Russell, if you want to hop in with how things evolved for the US.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, so it all started off in 2013. That, as I said, it came from the university, and we did a prototype at the university. I tested this, and I worked on that for some time, and felt like this is really good. This is helping me, and if it helps me, then it must be able that it can help others as well. But I had no clue how could I even get this out on the market. So then eventually I came in contact with Jessica Broström, and she's the CEO of the company today. She had a long experience from the largest manufacturer of hospital like beds and sterilizers and such, and bringing their products out on a global market. So once again, she was a perfect fit to bring this product out on the market. And one thing that even before I met Jessica, I also had some initial contacts with the big players in this industry, because then I thought, like, here I have a perfect solution. It's really good. Just give it to them and they can put it on the market. And I had some initial contacts, but to be honest, they weren't that interested in bringing it to the market. So then I decided, let's try it myself. And then I brought Jessica on, and we started off in Scandinavia, got really good results. And then eventually started expanding out in, first of all, Germany, and then UK, and later on several more countries in Europe, later on Australia and Japan. And then we felt like this time we are ready for the US market. And along these years, we also had a lot of growing pains, or child diseases, as we say in Sweden, as an engineer. Because bringing this product from university out on the market, it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't.
Sure.
It was an early stage of the foot that we are selling today. So we needed to do some interactions with development as well into the foot that we have on the market today.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of learning that happened through each expansion and each market trial. Because, as I said earlier, too, even though users expect similar things, there's so much more at play in each different market. You know, in Germany, they'll just pay for the most expensive thing. In France, they're very finicky. And in the US, we just don't want to give the right devices to the right people sometimes. And it's a challenge that you have to overcome, or know how to overcome in different ways.
Absolutely. But US is by far the biggest market, and we had been looking at the US market for some time. And then in 2020, we felt like, now we are ready. Let's take the step and move forward. And we hired Russell, and then the pandemic hit. So that was a perfect timing.
A whole new challenge that nobody was prepared for. As I always say, you know, it's silly sometimes to say, well, even as a business, what is your 5-year goal? And then you throw something in like that, and you're like, this was not on anybody's radar. So how do we plan moving forward? So Russell, I'm curious to, obviously you have a large and experienced background in a variety of these areas, and from suppliers to manufacturers to clinicians or clinics, but holy cannoli.
Yeah. So, I mean, as Christoffer said, so the company really did have a very sound strategy in terms of entering the US market. And it started with actually becoming well-established, going through those growing pains, or childhood diseases, as we would say, because you can have the greatest design for a product in the world, but until you go through all the testing and everything that needs to be done to support that. But one thing we know for sure in prosthetics particularly is, until you get it on end users, right? Until the person who lives with it is wearing it, you're not going to discover the particular pain points, if you will, you know, where things might go wrong eventually. Because you can't, even if you do a 3 million step cycle on a machine, that's not really the equivalent of truly 3 million steps a person takes in a year. So they get the product to market, they get it on people, end users in Scandinavia, in other European markets, a couple other global markets too, Australia, Japan, as Christoffer mentioned. All with the eye toward, let's face it, the golden egg is the United States. It's the third largest country in the world, but it's the largest GDP. So it has spent the most money on healthcare and in the globe. So the intent is to get to the U.S. market eventually, but at the right time. So you want to go through those growing pains, work the kinks out, right, and make sure the product is where it needs to be. And we did all that. They did all that prior to me joining the company. And then, of course, like we would have hit the ground running a little quicker, I think, had we not been stymied by the pandemic. But even through that, even though the first year of our partnership, as I think of it, was challenging because it was very difficult to go out and see clinics and make ourselves known. We still managed to do some important things like forge partnerships with the main distributors here in the U.S., Cascade and SPS, eventually Pell, Empire. So we have those relationships built. So we're doing all those important things, and entering the market and trying to make our way that way. And I will say it's not without. We're a small company, and when I joined the company, I'm the first employee here in the U.S. Even though my European, Swedish colleagues have a lot of experience on a global level, still like dealing with kind of the day-to-day activities in the U.S. Some of it was fun and funny. For instance, when I first met with Jessica, we were talking about how we would just get paid. Basically, how will the clinics pay us? I said, well, they'll pay potentially by credit card. And she was like, really? It was like a stunner to her, like, what's that about? And then starting to talk about things like reimbursement and L coding and PDAC approval and all of these things. And there were changes going on within that world as well. But even some of the even smaller things in terms of entering the US market, like one of the things that, I was, in my 50s at the time, and one day we were having a discussion about what day of the week, what day the week starts on officially. And of course, as an American, I'm like, well, it starts on Sunday, of course. Look at your calendar. It starts on Sunday. And my Swedish colleagues are like, no, it starts on Monday. And like, we literally compared calendars. And I thought that's not a global thing. That I thought the whole world started on Sunday for the week. But no, like just that small little thing, like, creates those getting to know you moments between Americans and the US. But some of the other things that were interesting, for instance, were, Americans, we are a more, I don't know, maybe congenial kind of like folk in general. So like when you would go out to meet with clinics, I remember the first few times I went out with Jessica or Christoffer here in the US, and we would have these meetings, and people were so receptive to us and talking to us and saying, oh yeah, the product seems great, can't wait to use it. And we would walk out and we were thinking, we couldn't wait for the sales and the orders to start flowing in. Because if you got that type of reception in Europe, it meant an order was forthcoming. But one of the things I kind of knew intuitively, but they had to learn along the way, is that, I'll put this in quotations, Americans lie, right? It's the old, hey, I'll call you later. It doesn't really mean it's going to happen. It means being, courteous and being, nice. But, we had to kind of grow accustomed to that aspect of it as well, in terms of getting used to the market and what it means to operate here.
Sure. Yeah. It's too often I feel like it seems like once you've proven your product and your concept overseas and you're ready to enter, the first answer is always, okay, well, we need to get a sales guy. And I've been through those paces, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that is the last thing that we need. How about, as you said earlier, getting into clinics, showing this product, getting the feedback? For all you know, for as great as it is, it's not going to fit this population, not because it's not great, but perhaps it can't be reimbursed because it doesn't fit into PDAC coding. So what do
Right.
you do with that, and how do you make sure that it will be successful and it's not just another throwaway name or, you know, something somebody has in a back corner?
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, the reality of having to navigate reimbursement in the US. And by the way, we're not, that we don't have an exclusive on dealing with um, the trials and tribulations of reimbursement. Every
Mhm.
country does have their own level of,
Sure.
but the PDAC and L coding aspect of it is unique to the US. And so trying to understand that, particularly when you're coming from and trying to keep your eye on other global markets, can be challenging. So that's one of the things we really have to work on. And right as we came to market was when PDAC really started to, I guess, scrutinize some of the L codes for prosthetic feet, which
Mm,
prior to, say, 2020, 2021, wasn't really a main focus for the PDAC folks. Orthotics had dealt with it quite a bit, but prosthetics had kind of flown under the radar to a great degree. But in 2020, PDAC decided that the L5987 and the L5980 codes would have to have a PDAC approval on any feet that got reimbursed through Medicare on their
interesting.
coding. And it made everyone on both on clinical side, on the manufacturing side, particularly attuned to what was going on and maybe nervous. And so everyone started basically submitting feet and having them evaluated.
Mm,
And a lot of feet got downcoded into the 5981 only category. So
okay.
again, changed the landscape. It just made it a more difficult place to navigate in some ways from what we had anticipated. Um, but
Yeah.
not something that can't be overcome, but just truly, it created challenges that were unexpected, but I guess that's just the nature of the beast and coming to a new market.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we jump into the Extend Connect and the Extend Foot and kind of talk about the products themselves, what is your, as a smaller organization, still, you know, it's been a little bit over a decade since the company started, right? But
Yeah.
for the US, it hasn't even really been 5 years. So, what is your take on all of this uh, consolidation and acquisition and all these movers and shakers? You know, the two big O's are no longer the only ones. You've got Hanger that's acquiring manufacturers. You've got Equal that is really coming into the picture and acquiring clinics, manufacturers, you know, you name it. There's a place for somebody under that umbrella. And, you know, for better or worse, you know, it is what it is. It depends on kind of where you fall on which side of the coin. But what is that? How do you take all of this? Is there
So
opportunity for the independents now? Is there
yeah,
less?
I mean, that's an excellent question, Linda, and it's one that even beyond how it affects Lindhe Xtend specifically, I truly, because I've been in this industry so long and I'm in the profession so long, that I really do, like, I feel like an affinity for it, and I want it to survive. And I
Mhm.
can harken back to the days when and any number of startups could really come out of nowhere. Literally, I
Mhm.
remember going to ISPO in 1991 when a small little Icelandic company named Oser showed up with a small booth, and they had a really tremendously revolutionary product that they were showing and got tons of attention. And obviously,
Mhm.
they parlayed that over the course of decades to be a global giant. Good
Yeah.
for them. But that opportunity for them existed then. And I
Mhm.
feel like one of the things we might be missing as a profession now, or stifling, is that ability for a small startup to get its legs under it, to make some progress. Because here's the thing, I mean, the ecosystem of orthotics and prosthetics has to have room for smaller companies, because
Mhm.
it's the smaller companies that drive the innovation. And
For sure.
that's just, the nature of things, right? The business nature of things. When Christoffer was talking a bit earlier about when he first developed the foot and went to the big companies and said, "Hey, I've got this cool foot, this innovative foot," I think it really could be a benefit to a lot of end users. they basically said, no thanks. And why is that? And the reason that they say no thanks is because, again, this is just business 101 on some level. If left to, everything being equal, the larger companies, the largest company is going to absolutely default to the status quo because it's all set up for them to succeed. They've got, they're in the position to win. So they don't want to change the game because they're winning. And so they only are forced to change when someone below them, some smaller company, comes along with an innovation and that kind of disrupts the playing field. So then they go, "Ooh, boy, we gotta react to that. Let's, come up with something that can challenge that," or and so they basically challenge themselves to, go back to the drawing board, come up with a better product. If there wasn't this small, basically education institution working on a microprocessor knee 30 something years ago, that wasn't Autobach who was developing that. That was a company, a professor basically in Canada who was working on that. They saw it. They saw the potential, and good for them that they did.
Yeah.
It needed their strength and their global reach to really bring it to market and make it this great benefit for everyone. But having that kind of combination of someone kind of with a genesis of an idea like that, builds and builds and builds until a bigger company can either develop on their own, or like say, yep, that's a good idea, we're going to infuse some capital into that, or just that other company kind of like can grow exponentially independently in challenge, any number of things. But there has to be oxygen in the ecosystem for all of us to thrive.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. And, having been on both sides of having worked for a larger manufacturer that acquired a smaller, yes, Touch Bionics had been around for a while, but acquired a smaller startup. And we were much more nimble and quicker to the punch. And then going to Brain Robotics that, the innovation is there and they keep wanting to churn out the next thing. It's interesting to see from both points because there are pluses and minuses to both situations, right? A small startup, I agree with you 100%. That's where the innovations come from because they are more nimble. They're able to, you get some feedback, you get enough feedback from enough clinicians or users, you begin to immediately take that and implement it and make sure that the next version is better. And that can come out much quicker. What necessarily isn't there that a larger organization does have is all of that, I guess, power behind it of being able to have this needed support for that additional testing up front. So you may not end up being the first to market, but holy crap, have they tested this thing to death and they know that it is going to be a success. Whereas for a smaller company, it may have taken 5 years, which is still short in the grand scheme of things. For a larger organization, it may take 10 plus, but when it comes out, it is going to be solid. So it's, which one do you want? And I agree that the smaller ones kind of push the larger behemoths along and they may not be able to catch up as quickly, but it's almost like this push and pull situation.
So, yeah, I have like two very real world examples of how that I think plays out, very specific, and how we're involved in it. So Christoffer is experiencing difficulty walking on uneven surfaces in a natural setting, outdoors, basically, right? Because traditional carbon fiber feet, which have now been around when the time of his accidents for 20 plus years. So they're a great product. They were an unbelievable boon for the amputee community, right? So when they came along in the late 80s. So great product, but the nature of them was really designed for straightforward locomotion. And so for uneven surfaces, not particularly accommodating. Christoffer develops the foot. It's really good on uneven surfaces, outdoor, natural, like wooded trails, beaches, that type of thing.
Yeah, I've seen some of the triathlons and crazy races you've done, which is just, I can't do that.
So he's got this foot. he comes to market with it, starts to get, particularly in Europe, starts to get some traction, some cutting into some market share. Well, a few years later, both Autobach with their side flex and Willowwood with their Meta Arc come basically to market with feet that basically replicate that kind of motion. And good for them. They should. That's their job as a company, as a for-profit business, to develop products.
But I think that's the whole dynamics. You need someone taking the lead of product development and bringing that out, and then others will follow. And I don't think the bigger players will be the lead taker on many of these, especially like thinking outside of the box. For example, the side flexibility or the next product with the Xtend Connect, where users used like an Allen key to untight and take the foot off for bringing pants on and off, or trousers. But with and that was not a secure moment. I did that and I failed several times. But now with the Xtend Connect adapter, I can just take my foot off and just replace a static adapter that looked the same for, I don't know, 40 years or even more maybe.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting fact.
The Xtend Connect, which is what Christopher is talking about, that's a quick connect disconnect component system, and this is like in real time.
Quick disconnect almost.
Yeah, it's a quick disconnect. Yeah, so it takes about 8 seconds to take your foot or your entire prosthetic off.
Okay.
And put it back on. It's so fast. And there were other products going way back. The Farrier coupler basically, had the same functionality going back 20-something years, 25 years. It was a little less user-friendly, I'll just put it that way. And Autobach had a version that they had as well. And, so they were basically like living with it. But as we came, particularly in the US market, I think, and really started to get some traction, started to get some attention on it, Autobach goes back to the drawing board, redesigns their entire version of theirs, basically scraps the one they had and says, no, we're going to come up with something different, something better. And they have, to their credit. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, why? They didn't do that because they think it's a niche product. They did it because they see it as this real potential from a global perspective, and what it does to the end user. It gives them control over their own prosthesis. So if a company the size of Autobach decides to put in the amount of money and time to go back to R&D, do the testing, do everything they need to do to build a better mousetrap, then that again speaks to the need. But they would not have done that had they not been pushed. Everyone needs to be pushed.
For sure.
That's what I think we are doing.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to my need, I think, for space for all of us, smaller companies, innovative companies, the startups, the fledgling companies of the world, to have an ability to not just reach into the independent clinics, but also the hangers of the world, and Autobach and Össur's clinics as well. They have to be receptive to using other manufacturers.
Yeah, I guess without stirring the pot or anything, how do you there are some smaller manufacturers that almost take offense to what you just talked about in terms of, well, we came up with that need and that idea, but now you guys, the larger manufacturers, are kind of taking and running with it and saying, well, before we came, there was, we've kind of taken it to the next step. And so now the assumption is that people just think of those larger manufacturers as the ones that came up with it, when it really, in this case, it's you guys that came up with the need, or, like you said, building this better solution for users. Do you, I think you've kind of answered this in terms of like, everybody needs room in this larger market. Everybody needs the space to push and pull off of each other. But do you take offense to Autobach then saying, well, dang it, okay, there's a place, and now because we have larger market share and a larger voice and a larger brand, we got to fill this void? Or do you see it like, well, that's a great compliment, now let's push ourselves further and move on?
Yeah, I think more towards the latter, that we help each other out by pushing this product. And if a big player like Autobox sees that this is a great product need, then we were really good onto something. And being the first one out in a new product area like this absolutely have some benefits, especially regarding patents, because you're the first one out there. So that definitely helped out, and we are really satisfied with our solution that we have with double security, and it's safe, and we have all the locking in place with no tools or anything, and that. And also that right now we are launching, or soon to be actually, are launching a second version of this that is also maybe not so much for the US market, but more for the European market, with covers like foam covers, dream skins, etc. A quick connect and disconnecting use adapter also for use in a prosthetic leg like that.
No, that's great. Yeah, certainly
So
sharing.
Lindhe, I'm just going to add on to that a little bit. So
yeah.
So when I'm out talking to people, I certainly, like, there are those moments where, like, I'll be talking about the fact that our foot was the first one that had the kind of inversion, eversion, like at, that significant amount of motion in it. And one of the things I say all the time is that's not the reason you as a clinician should prescribe it for, and put it on your end user. It would be nice, but that's the reason you should use it, is because it's the best choice for them. And so, and for you as the clinician, and the benefits it gives to a clinician. But at the same time, human nature is such, when Autobot came out with their new Quick Connect version, which is a good product, I must admit, like, a part of me was like, come on, man, couldn't you give us just this little piece of the pie? But once you step back and you go, no, we still, I think, I get it unbiased, I think we have a better product. And when you really take a bigger picture view of it, which is they're getting into it because they see a big market, then it's kind of affirming to our, it's proof of concept for us that we're onto something. So, but it does, sure, so once in a while it'll take some wind out of the sails.
Yeah. So I know we're a little bit over time, but tell me a bit more, putting on my product marketer hat, tell me a bit more about the products, the Xtend Foot and the Xtend Connect. Your literature talks a lot about, it shares a lot of really great facts. So I'll just share it here for any users or clinicians that are wondering, well, why is this a need? That 8 out of 10 amputees would change shoes if it was easier. And 6 out of 10 amputees find it difficult to change pants, which is something you already talked to, Christoffer. If you could tell me a little bit, I always find it difficult to say, well, why is, your product the best one? Well, there is no best one. It's the right one for the user. So how do your solutions and your products, how do they stand out? Like, talk to me about the PDAC side of things, reimbursement, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with, whether it be the clinicians that may be listening or users that may be interested in finding out more. What's the gap that you're filling? Again, talk a little bit more about that in terms of the solution and how they can look to acquire it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the main thing that of course, we have several, and maybe I can leave that to you, Russell, later on with the different versions and where it fits and all of that. But I truly believe in that patient, together with the clinician, should try different things to find the absolute best solution for this patient. So that's why we have a free trial of all our products, both the Xtend Connect adapters, but also the feet. So that if you have a patient or you just want to try it on some patients, you can do that risk-free and just see. And please let them take, for example, the foot with them back home, or the adapter as well for that case, and just use it in their home environment, because that's where the real test happens. When you're walking in the hard places where as a patient, here it's a bit tricky to walk in this area. I will test it once again with this foot and just see is there a difference or not. Or like bringing these pants on and off, or changing shoes, or maybe I have a water leg and a regular leg, and I will switch in between of those, for example. So making patients try them and use them at home. That's the key.
Yeah, no, I think that's critical. There's not enough of that.
Yeah, and then I pass it onwards to you, Ross.
So the one thing I will add, I guess, Linda, is that you mentioned the PDAC and reimbursement, that type of thing. It is a challenge here in the U.S. And one of the things we encountered was our foot that because I don't want to get into all the gritty on it, but the additional the L5981, which is kind of a standard K3 level walking foot code, we have that PDAC approved. But we anticipated a 5986, which is a multi-axial code as well. That's an add-on code. We expected that. Didn't happen. We actually went back and redesigned the foot a little bit, and have now introduced a second foot in the U.S. market, basically so we can have that additional code. Because even though it's not a lot of money, it's $500-600 value in terms of reimbursement. It makes a big difference in today's economic market in O&P clinics. So we do have that, and again, that's something specific to the U.S. market in terms of how we have to navigate here versus other global locations.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's something that we touched on during our kind of pre-live conversation or during the conversation. Is that PDAC conversation? Is that understanding and making sure that no matter how great your product is, does it answer those PDAC bullet points, and does it fit in within that language of what that code describes? It can have all the bells and whistles that it wants or needs, but does it fit in? And to some degree it's a bit archaic, because thinking back on to my upper limb side of things, it's part of why we did a recent article of, it's great that a hand may be waterproof and it can have really fast, it can charge fast, and it can have all these different things. But at the end of the day, to meet the L6880, is it multi-articulating? Does it have individual motors? Okay, great. Everything else is, maybe it'll get paid for, maybe not. So understanding all of those nuances is so critical. And trying to figure out where does it fit in, and how. You spoke to the foot being K3 and above. So is it mainly for K3 and K4 users, or can K1 and K2 try to reimburse, or what is that?
So, I mean, that's one of those things where, I mean, if a clinician or a patient wanted to put on the foot, if they were a K2 level user, for instance, they could. But you can't really code it out. If you're putting a K, whatever foot you put on a K2 patient, you have to code as a K2 foot. So you're restricted to, you can always downgrade a coding on a foot, but then you're not getting reimbursed any, significant amount of money. So it would be highly unlikely. And typically a foot like ours and so many others on the market that are K3 plus level are overkill for a K2 level patient who's just really, typically just community ambulations, single gauge walking speed. So it's really it's a tremendous foot for outdoor lifestyle. And I think for the demo of what most, I always say, the people who were on the posters in the waiting room who are rock climbing and, hanging off cliffs and skydiving with their prosthetics, that's a real small minority of people, right? The vast majority of people, even K3 level patients, are walking. That's what they do.
Yeah.
You walk around. Hopefully you walk around outside. You walk the dog, you go to the park, you go fishing and hiking. And that's what this foot will do for them. It'll allow them to live their life outdoors. One thing I tell people here in the US is when Christoffer has his accidents at the age of 17, he is a typical Swede, right? And one of the things I've learned from being in Sweden is, man, do they love and cherish and value being outdoors. It's a big part of their lifestyle. And he wanted that to continue. And traditional carbon fiber feet just didn't give him the access to the natural world in the way that the Xtend foot does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I think that's a great place to kind of wrap this up. But before we do, I want to ask: is there anything that the two of you want to add that maybe we didn't touch on, or something that you want people to know that may not be able to go to trade shows or see you guys in these different settings? Is there something that you want to leave behind for, again, whether it be a user or a new clinician that maybe hasn't trialed your products, anything at all?
I think we could absolutely do a much deeper dive, but then we need an entire new session.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that again.
Yeah.
We can certainly have a follow-up that is just product and solution specific. I'm happy to do that anytime.
So, Lindhe, I think I would leave it with this, that whether it's clinicians, particularly younger clinicians maybe who want to try new things, we would love the opportunity to be involved in the conversation. But also anyone from a manufacturing side of things who might be checking this out with a younger company or maybe thinking about entering. One of the things we want to do is like work with others, like companies that are looking to enter the U.S. market. Just communicate, just talk, very informally perhaps, but be part of the solution to that overall health of the O&P ecosystem that I keep referring to. I mean, it's an important thing to thrive.
Yeah, no, and I think that warms my heart, because that's the goal of these webinars. And that's why I wanted to create the space to have these types of open conversations, that it's not, again, all of us at trade shows trying to hide our badges and be like, will you talk to me? I don't know.
Right.
I'm not from anywhere. I just want to know. And it's not about just getting this insider information. It's just about how can we all help each other so that we can move things forward. And it's not just everybody just gets pigeonholed and they can only focus on the thing that they know, and that's it. So that is spot on for why we're all here. So I'm thrilled you guys were able to give me some of your time, and all the listeners. Before we wrap, I just wanted to add, so Lindhe Xtend kicked off our summer webinar series. Our next webinar is on July 25th. Or I'm sorry, July 8th. God, I'm getting away with my summers here. And we'll have Ether Biomedical, and they'll share their startup journey. That's a whole different experience. I'm sure there are many similarities though, but different market and different needs. But how they came to be, how, where they are in their startup journey and entering the US market. There's a lot still going on there. But thank you all for listening in. You can check out all of our previous webinars as well as this one on YouTube. If you want to learn more and see other downloads, you can go to calibration.marketing. That's our website. And if there's anything that I can help out with from a marketing or product or strategy perspective, I would love to do so or have a conversation. And with that, we'll wrap it for today. So thank you, Russell and Christoffer.
All right. Thank you, Lindhe.
Have a great rest of your summer.
You too. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.